What happens when sacred symbols of faith turn into tools of judgment?
We've both lived in worlds where not wearing a certain piece of clothing can bring harsh judgment. Today we're diving into Mormon garments, why they're so important, and how the women in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives are facing that same pressure.
Trust us, this topic goes deeper than you think.
So stay tuned.
Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 35 kids. We were members of the FLDS community, which is a polygamous community run by their prophet Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a life sentence in prison.
I was raised mainstream LDS in Utah. Sam and I have been married for 10 years and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. We want to quickly thank all of you who have recently subscribed. We have a goal of reaching 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe.
Today, we've been talking for, a long time now, ever since Secret Life of Mormon Wives has come out, about the fact that we wanted to do an episode specifically talking about garments and modesty within the mainstream LDS or Mormon church, especially because it's such a huge topic of conversation within the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and who's wearing them, who isn't wearing them, why they should or shouldn't, or is the word should or shouldn't just about shaming people, judgment, all of that stuff. So we were like, we need to dedicate a whole episode just to this topic because it's so much deeper than I think people realize.
Yes.
A lot of people from the outside might look at it and be like, what kind of underwear? Like a lot of times people will be like, why should it matter what kind of underwear you're wearing? But it's not just underwear. It is a very special and sacred piece of clothing to the Mormon religion. Right. So we want to get into like where it came from, why it's important, what church leaders have said about whether or not you should be wearing them and how you should be wearing and treating them, and then go into the culture of the shaming, judgment, how people look at other people. Because the first scene or the first thing you see when you see these TikTok moms, right? This mom talk, you see girls, and I had to wear a black tank top just to kind of like in honor of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, right? But these women wear tank tops or crop tops, and instantly on social media, I was seeing this outcry of people saying, this doesn't represent Mormon wives. Even from people who are never going to watch the show or never had watched the show at this point, right? And I wanted to point out the first thing that people do to be able to recognize whether somebody who's married or would have been married in the temple is Mormon or not is based on whether or not they're wearing garments.
And what they're wearing, because garments, we'll get into this, but you can only wear certain kinds of clothing in order to cover up the garments that you're supposed to be wearing. And so that's a key point, though, is that Mormon wives, the reason that is such a big deal is you only get your garments if you've been through the temple. And so if you have been married in the temple, which a lot of these women have, then where are your garments? And that's something long before this show ever aired, Melissa had seen TikToks or other videos on the social media platforms and have seen these women that were, hey, I'm a Mormon mom and this, and just, blasting all over the internet that they are Mormon moms. Yet the way they dress does not say in any way, especially for those that were raised in Utah, that they are Mormon moms.
Exactly. And so, really, we're going to start with what are garments, because a lot of people maybe don't even know anything about garments or what they are, what they look like. We are going to be going from the church website directly in order to remain as respectful as possible about what a garment is and use quotes from them, because I think it's important to, as you're coming through this journey of what a garment is from our perspective, we really want to make sure you understand the importance and the significance from the perspective of someone who is LDS and is trying to remain true to their covenants or listen to church leaders, okay? Mm-hmm. You have to start with that perspective to see how it can go from there to judgment, shame, wearing them, not wearing them, those choices. I feel like you can't understand that piece of it without understanding first where it comes from. So first, let's get into what garments are, because I've heard a lot of people also say like a garment just means a piece of clothing, right? Or they'll be so confused when they hear LDS people use the word garment as like exclusive to their temple garments. the full name is a temple garment.
Right.
And it, as Sam said, is something that when you go through the temple for the first time, the LDS temple, you receive those garments. And it is a special, we'll show a picture, a church-approved picture up here to show you what they look like, and you wear them underneath your clothes as a sign of your covenants. But I really think, again, going back to the importance of where this is coming from the church's perspective, I wanted to read what a bishop, or during a temple recommend interview, what bishops would say about the temple garment. And this is in their handbook. It's also like everybody can know this. It's on the website, on the church news website, about what the garment means to the LDS church and how they get it. So I'm just going to read this quote directly.
Yeah, and really quick before she reads this, so this is during an interview in order to get into the temple. So in order for a church leader to determine your worthiness of going and participating in temple ordinances and things like that. So, and this is done every so often, that you go and you renew. Even if you get a temple recommend, you still are required to go every so often to
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years to be exact. Yes, thank you. I couldn't remember off the top of my head if it was 1 or 2. Every 2 years to get that renewed and once again prove or show your worthiness in order to continue your participation in the ordinances done in the temple.
Yes, because there is a question that asks that if you are wearing your garments according to how you were taught in the temple, and then they share this information with whoever's being interviewed.
Right.
And I'll put it on the screen, and also so you can see where it came from the church news website themselves. But do you want to read this for us, babe?
Sure. The garment of the holy priesthood reminds us of the veil in the temple, and that veil is symbolic of Jesus Christ. When you put on your garment, you put on a sacred symbol of Jesus Christ. Wearing it is an outward expression of your inner commitment to follow him. The garment is also a reminder of your temple covenants. You should wear the garment day and night throughout your life. When it must be removed for activities that cannot reasonably be done while wearing the garment, seek to restore it as soon as possible. As you keep your covenants, including the sacred privilege to wear the garments, as instructed in the initiatory ordinances, you will have greater access to the Savior's mercy, protection, strength, and power.
So I know that's a little long, but I think that it really entails and shows the importance. The ordinances in the temple are the most important thing in being able to receive exaltation, be able to get to the highest degree of glory and heaven in the celestial kingdom. These are all absolutely necessary ordinances to have and to be able to participate in and make these covenants with God. Okay, so when you're going into the temple, in there you're told, more things about how to wear it, but in particular, just like it just barely said in that quote, it is meant to be a symbol of the Savior. It's supposed to remind you of your covenants, and they specifically tell you when you receive it to not take them off, that you're meant to wear them day and night, is how it's said. And that's how it was said to me. I've also heard that depending on who tells you, I remember I was able to ask questions, and I kind of wanted to ask you this too. I was able to ask questions, and I had like the sweetest little old lady, like she was probably in her 70s, that was giving me my garments and explaining. And I am a big tennis player, and I asked her, like, am I allowed to take them off to like wear athletic clothes to play tennis? And she told me that I really should not, that I should try to like wear tennis clothes. And I remember leaving like tennis clothes that would cover them, which is not really possible. And I remember leaving because my mom was with me, and I was like, do you think that's right that I can't wear tennis clothes? And my mom was like, no, like you can wear tennis skirts. You just want to put your garments on as quickly after. So I know that there is a little bit of like, depending on who's telling you, if I had gone in and someone else would have been like, oh yeah, absolutely take them off during athletic stuff, put them on after. So there is like a little bit of leeway, but the quote is day and night. Yeah,
there's a few things in this quote, and then I'd be happy to share my experiences and also compare the FLDS garment to the mainstream LDS church as well, because it has changed over time. But one of the things that I found very interesting in this quote that we just read is that it says that it is an outward expression of your inward commitment that you made between you and God. I found that interesting because it's not really outward.
It's not supposed to be, right?
No. Well, you're never supposed to show your garments. You're always supposed to keep them covered. You're supposed to keep the meanings of the garments, the covenants that you made regarding the garments to yourself. You're not supposed to share those. So it's not really outward. You see other religions and they wear these outward expressions of their faith, but it's visible for the world to see. This is underwear. It's underwear not to be shown. It's underwear to be covered up. So I found that interesting because in my opinion, based on what I would assume outward, it's not outward to me.
Yeah.
Is that fair enough to say?
No, that's a really interesting take on it that I had not thought about until you just said that. And does the outward part then come with like the way it looks when you're covering them then becomes the outward expression? But that's where the judgment comes in later, which we'll get into.
If that's the case, why has the garment been altered over the years to allow different kinds of clothing?
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, that's something we can talk about a little bit more in depth as we go on. Secondly, it says that you are supposed to only take them off for specific activities. You mentioned tennis, working out, in some cases, swimming, things where obviously you can't have your garments on to do those things. And then here comes the culture, right? You have people that will, take their garments off to put on their gym clothes. And then suddenly they work out and then they're running to Starbucks real quick. Oh, sorry, Swig real quick to get their drinks. And then next thing you know, they're going to pick up their kids from school. They're doing this, doing that, and the other. Next thing you know, they're exercising all day long. And that's some of the things you see, and that's where some of the judging comes into place, is people think, oh my goodness, I know that person went through the temple, but look at what they're doing out and about, and they're dressed this way, and they're showing some of their stomach, and they're showing their shoulders.
Or you're filming a TikTok.
And showing the world. Anyway, so things like that make it very easy for those around you that know the rules to cast judgment.
I would say, rather than the idea, like you just mentioned, that it's an outward expression, I would say your lack of garments is a louder expression to people within the church.
The lack of garments.
The lack of garments speaks way louder and is way noisier in the culture, especially within Utah, than what wearing them is.
Yeah.
And along with what you're saying of like people, seeing whether or not you're wearing them or taking them off for certain things, I've heard a lot of people say specifically, well, it says day and night. It doesn't say all the time. It says this, it says that, trying to find more excuses to like not wear them. So I did want to put this quote from a recent General Conference talk by President Oaks. And it was just barely this year in 2024 that I think gives a good, now President Oaks is in the quorum of the 12 apostles. So he is an apostle. And I think it gives light to the expectation that church leaders have. If you are going to go make these covenants in the temple, this is the expectation of what the garments have along with it. You want to read this one too, babe?
I'm on reading duty today. Let's do it.
Give your best President Oaks voice. I'm just kidding.
You got it. To achieve those holy purposes, we are instructed to wear temple garments continuously, with the only exception being those obviously necessary. Because covenants do not take a day off, to remove one's garments can be understood as a disclaimer of the responsibilities and blessings to which they relate. In contrast, persons who wear their garments faithfully and keep their temple covenants continually affirm their role as disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ.
So once again, it just reiterates the fact that wearing your temple garments is a way to show you're a disciple of Jesus Christ. It, as they said in the beginning, it is an outward expression, even though it's not supposed to be viewed. The garment itself isn't supposed to be viewed. It's an outward expression. It's supposed to remind you of your covenants. And it is a very big deal if you've been through the temple to honor those, because part of when you receive them, you do covenant, which is a promise between you and God. You covenant that you will wear them.
Yep. And you promise that you will, exactly. And then you're instructed exactly how to do that within the temple, like we read in the beginning.
And then you are reminded in general conference talks like this by leaders of the church the importance of remembering to do what you promised to do.
And I do have to point out, since I'm the one that brought up the outward, and it's not so outward statement, I do understand for those of you that are active LDS members watching today, I do understand that what would be said about that remark that I made is that it's an outward expression to oneself as a reminder to remember the covenants you made in the temple when you are wearing those garments. So I do understand that. I was just pointing out that it sounded interesting that it was referred to as an outward expression when really it's supposed to be very personal, not so much displaying to the world.
Yeah, and so when you have these rules that, I mean, there are so many other rules we've talked about, even just last week. I'll put a link above to the Word of Wisdom, right? There are other rules that can kind of be interpreted differently, whether or not coffee and tea are supposed to mean no caffeine or not. That's not doctrinal, right? And there's certain things within the culture that are just cultural and that don't have doctrine backing. Garments is something that's very doctrinal. Anything that you're receiving instruction in the temple is supposed to be very important. And then to covenant, not just, okay, thanks, yeah, I'll wear these when I feel like it or when it looks like how I want, or that, like, these are very, very important things that are very doctrinal. And so that is where it becomes very easy and quick to judge.
Yep, exactly.
But before we get into the culture and the judging, I want to take a step. We're going to take a side step, or I should go like this, a side step to the FLDS, because the FLDS also had garments.
We did. And so garments are fundamental in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you go back to the beginning, they were introduced by Joseph Smith himself, and he made it very clear how the garment was supposed to be. If you go back into the early teachings of the prophets in the church, he made it very clear how the garments were supposed to be, how they were supposed to look, the purpose of the garments. So, of course, the fundamentalist churches, both the FLDS, or not both, but including the FLDS and many more out there, have continued on with a similar style to the first garment ever designed by and because of the way that Joseph Smith himself said that it was supposed to be done. So, that being said, it was a full piece, one-piece garment, completely covering your body from your wrists. It had like a V-neck, or maybe it was round. I'm forgetting. I think it might have been round collar, but it would come about this high, all the way down to your ankles, and it was a one-piece garment that would either snap up in the front, or I also saw buttons in the front that would button up. And then on top of that, of course, there was an open area where you would go to the restroom, and you would wear normal underwear over top of your garment, and that was completely separate from the garment within the FLDS. Also, something very different in the FLDS church is that we didn't have temples that we went to attend services and things like that. So we started wearing garments at a very young age. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the rule of thumb was when you were baptized at age 8, you would start wearing those. However, I think things changed over time, and the children started wearing garments a lot earlier than 8 years old as well. So it was very different. Also, I should point out that the garments in the FLDS, I don't know about the other garments within the other fundamentalist groups, but the ones I'm familiar with did not have any kind of symbolism, markings, any of that. It was just a white piece of fabric that was to cover your body and ensure that you were wearing what they would say is modest clothing.
Yeah, and that's a really good point to mention as well, is that the fundamentalists have the original garment, as Joseph Smith revealed, but the mainstream LDS church has changed their garment over time as fashion standards have changed. I know that even since I wore garments, like I now have seen like other friends' garments, and they come, like it used to be clear, like 4 inches past your shoulder, you know, it would come to here, and it would go all the way under your arm, and then they got rid of and kind of cut out under the arm so you don't have to worry about like sweating there, and then it became more of a cap sleeve, and then last time I saw, you know, it's now getting kind of more towards the edge right here of your shoulder, so it's kind of changed as far as like with society. Now, they're not like spaghetti strap or tank tops. Not that they couldn't be, like, I don't know. There's a chance that it could change at that some point it could, right? When I wore them, they had to go all the way down to my kneecap, like the shorts. They're kind of like spandex shorts, but they would go all the way down to right above the knee. And I know that that's changed a lot too as well. So the mainstream LDS garments have changed. They've changed the fabrics to make them more comfortable, breathable. They've changed the styles to make them easier to wear, not necessarily making it so you can follow all fashion trends, you know, or wear a tank top. You definitely can't do that as of right now. But they definitely have changed over times.
But if you're wearing extremely short shorts or your stomach is showing, that's clear that you're not wearing garments. Or if you're wearing a spaghetti strap, those are some very clear, obvious signs that you're not wearing garments.
Which kind of leads us into the judgment, in the sense that now that we've kind of covered the importance, this is why members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who are trying to follow the words of the prophets, follow the words of the covenants that they have made in the temple, and are wearing their garments. I'm seeing a lot all over social media, even before Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, of this judging people based on whether or not they're wearing their garments or whether or not they're wearing the type of garments that they should be in order to get away with different types of clothing. So, for example, I've been seeing on TikTok, like, some girls putting on garments and saying, this is a garment-friendly dress, and it might go up midway up their thigh, and other women are saying, I could never wear my garments with that, and finding out that girls are maybe getting a size too small, or they're wearing petites, like meant for very petite women, and someone like my size that's 5'7" is wearing petite garments so that it goes up higher so they can still wear their garments in order to wear the shorter dresses that they want, or to get a smaller top so it clings more, and the shoulders, instead of going to here, might go to here, so that you can wear different types of clothes. Now, as far as like the way that I was raised and the way that we were kind of taught, is that you're not supposed to alter. I was told to never like tuck in your garments so that you could wear different types of shirts. Don't try to roll up your garments to make them shorter so you can wear different style clothes. We were always told to not. Whether or not getting a size that's too small for you so that they'll be shorter, they haven't come out and tried to say anything on that. But it's like a big cultural war that I'm seeing on social media that's kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah. And even for men, I might point out here as well that there were, during the time that we were always wearing our garments, there were times where I would get a T-shirt and the garment would stick below the sleeve. And so I was always, uncomfortable wearing the certain T-shirts or certain shorts, because for me as well, it was the bottom piece of your garment would go right above your knee. And so if you're wearing shorts that were 4 inches above your knee or 3 inches above your knee, even sometimes you would see a little bit of white showing below. And then that would make me, I know that some people aren't uncomfortable with it, but it would make me feel uncomfortable when pieces of my garment were showing. So even for men, I just want to point out, it's not just women here that have to be careful with what they wear, the man as well. And
it's the same type of standard in, like, when a guy, maybe if they're going to the gym and they don't wear their garments to the gym, then when they're supposed to put them on as soon as possible afterwards, right? Or if they're wearing a tank top for sports or things like that. So obviously most of the like beauty standards or like fashion standards, it's going to be easier for men than for women. But it's still up to guys too, because when we wore garments, like when you went to work out, you always wore T-shirts so that he could wear his garments while working out. Or a lot of times I would wear workout clothes where I could still keep my garments on as well. And once again, some people might hear that and say, whoa, that's not necessary. But once again, that depends on who you spoke to, because the person we spoke to when we went through the temple, they basically made it sound like if there is at all any chance in this world that you can wear them, you should be wearing them. 100%. And so that we took that as, well, if we can wear gym clothes that cover them up, we're supposed to wear them. So once again, it just kind of depends on the individual person and how they were instructed. It might be slightly different. Yeah, there's definitely some of that personal decision. And then there's still, it always comes back to the same thing of like the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. I know some people who are definitely going to take them off when they're working out, and they're going to go home and they're going to put their garments on right away because they aren't trying to get a loophole. It's just because it's uncomfortable. It's going to make them sweaty and gross, and they don't want that for their garments. So they change, So it just depends. Each person's going to be really different. And then there are the people who are going to look for the loopholes and say, I don't want to have to change my style, so I'm going to get something that's super small on me so that I can try to make my garments as small as possible so that I can wear more outfits, be more stylish. And you see that as well. And technically they're wearing their garments. Right. Sorry. When you say get something small, you don't mean their clothes. You mean get a size too small in the garment. Garments. So that the garments fit them small. Yep. Okay. So the garments will be shorter so that they'll come further up on their shoulder, those type of things. Now, those women are wearing their garments, so they are following their covenants, whether they're following the letter of the law, not the spirit, because, you know, it just depends on how all of it is so personal interpretation. And I know we said this at the beginning, but I will say it again. To people on the outside, this probably all seems silly. And I've seen a lot of like ex-Mormon creators or people that have never been Mormon or that don't understand the culture that are like, if you want to wear the shorts or you want to wear a tank top, then just wear it. Like, why does it matter that much? Just wear a different kind of underwear and then wear your garments when you go to church. And we have no judgment towards however anybody wants to wear or not wear their garments at all. Like, I think that it should be a personal choice, 100%. The goal of this video is just to show why you see that judgment and why you see the culture, why it's important in the church, why there are women who are judging about it and saying when they see a girl in a tank top, they say, I don't want that to represent me as a Mormon woman, because they're proving that they don't honor their covenants the way I do as a Mormon wife.
Exactly. And kind of coming back to the show, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives here, that is a big part of the reason why people that are active in the church saw the preview for this show and they said, whoa, 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 whoa. And that is absolutely a bad representation of us as the active members of the church. We don't even want to watch that. So I know a lot of people that have asked us our thoughts and opinion about the show because they don't want to watch it themselves. They don't think that it is a good representation. And this is people from active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and people that are not, that just don't even want to watch it because they don't feel that it is okay to show the church in that light. So just back to how important it is to look a certain way.
Yeah, and another thing to mention is that if you haven't gone through the temple, you're not going to have garments. I think I saw TikTok with Taylor Frankie Paul where she was talking about how, you know, she hadn't been endowed, she hadn't gone through the temple, and she was still receiving judgment because she was married. But if you're not married in the temple, then you don't have the garments to begin with. So your modesty standards are going to be different. However, you still know the standards that people are going to expect from you as a married Mormon mom, because they do expect the modesty standards to match as if you're wearing the garment, even if you don't, right? So there can definitely be so much judgment. I know that like garment checking, sometimes you hear where I'll admit, like you almost can't turn it off. Like once you know what you're looking for, we could be in Disneyland and I'll be like, oh, what a nice Mormon family. Like what a nice LDS family. I wonder if they're from Utah by my family. And, you know, we'll have like friends that have never been LDS be like, how do you know they're LDS? And I'm like, well, I can tell they're wearing garments.
I think just to point out here, I think that's more, I don't know if it's the women that notice that more, but I frequently don't notice.
He's always surprised too.
I'm always like, oh, how do you know? And then if I think about it, then I realize, but you definitely notice it a lot quicker than I do.
So fast. And it's I'm not even trying to judge them because, again, I don't care whether or not someone is LDS or not. I don't care whether or not they're wearing their garments or not at all. It's just one of those things that's a cultural thing that you're just raised to see it, and you're raised to be able to notice it, and you're going to notice. But then that automatically comes with a sense of judgment, which I fight really hard against, the judgment of that culture of if I see someone and then I'm like, oh, well, you're LDS. And then if I see somebody else and they say they're LDS and they're not wearing garment-friendly clothing, then I'm like, well, why aren't they? Have they not been through the temple? They're married. So does that mean they weren't worthy to be married in the temple? Does it mean that they had premarital sex? Did they do this? What kept them out of the temple? Like, your mind starts racing with judgments very, very quickly, which is so sad. It's so sad. And it's something that, again, it should be such a personal choice and shouldn't be something that is a measuring stick to people, right? Like whether or not their worthiness or how they feel, like there's no reason why we should use people's clothing as a way to beat them over the head with not being enough or not being worthy or not, hey, I know what covenants you made and you're not living up to them, so therefore you're less than me or I'm better than you. Right. But it happens all the time.
Yes, unfortunately, there is a lot of judgment going on, and it's not everyone, but it does happen. And along with that is when someone decides to step away from the church. And I will speak from the FLDS perspective first, and then we can go into the FLDS or the mainstream LDS church. Because like I said before, the FLDS also wore garments. And so you're going to laugh because it's very clear that the FLDS people dress differently. But especially the women, but also the men dress differently. And that is just because they always have to be wearing these long jeans and long shirts, button-up shirts with collars, 120 degrees outside, and we're out there on construction job sites working in the sun dressed this way. Or if someone jumps into a lake to go swimming, dressed this way. You know, they always keep that type of clothing on. So it stands out. But once again, when I decided to leave the FLDS church, and when people do, they decide to take off their garment. And when they take off their garments, now they can wear short sleeve shirts. They can wear shorts if they want to. And I know this is a bigger drastic difference than it would be leaving the mainstream LDS church. But man, I'll tell you, when I first tried on or put on a t-shirt, it felt so. First of all, the garment that I had worn my entire life almost was not on anymore. So it was a shirt touching my bare skin, which just felt so weird. And then on top of that, I was showing all of this skin. And so I just felt like it was kind of awkward. And then on top of all of that, I had never been in the sun my entire life. So I had a nice tan on my face, my hands, and that's it. That's it. So when I put a t-shirt on, or better yet, when I put shorts on, wow. I felt like I was naked and I was blinding everyone around me. So it was very, very awkward at first, transitioning from being dressed like the FLDS to wearing what you would consider modern day clothing.
Yeah, in the LDS church, I will say that deciding when and if to take off garments was like a huge deal, especially in our journey. I feel like it was something that was really hard. I think I was that type of person who definitely tried to wear it as much as possible and really didn't try to find any excuse to take it off. And I know that I've mentioned this in other videos. I was very much a checklist type of gal. And so I love when there's rules to be followed, because I feel like if I follow those rules, then it means I'm good. And I need that validation. And so trying to decide to take my garments off was really hard. And ultimately for me, and every person's journey is going to be so different. There might be people who are at the beginning of their faith journey and they take off their garments first because it's always felt oppressive to them or uncomfortable, even just physically uncomfortable, or trying to put long shorts under jeans. You know, there's those kind of discomforts. There are other people where the symbolism of it or the covenants of it might make them uncomfortable with temple ceremony rituals or things like that. And then for me, personally, it was more of, I still respected it as a sacred piece of clothing for the church. And I felt like it was disrespectful of me to wear something that was sacred to other people if I didn't believe in the covenants that made it sacred for them, if that makes sense. Like, I would never put on a different religion's sacred clothing because that would feel disrespectful if I didn't believe in their religion. And it got to a point for me in my faith that I felt like by me wearing it, it was disrespectful to the sacredness that I knew it held for other people. And so that was ultimately what led me to take off my garments out of respect for the garment itself and what that means to so many people that I love and care about. Yeah. And that's what did it. But it was very, very hard. I don't know how, like, is the rest of the world just walking around with wedgies all the time, because regular underwear has not been all that it's cracked up to be. I'll be honest. I've tried like so many different kinds. So if someone has like some good going from garments to regular underwear,
I don't know if we want our comment thread to be full of recommending different underwear.
I don't know. I feel like I need help though. Anyway, it's definitely a transition and it's not comfortable either. Like I said, for me, it was out of respect, but it's also really weird to be an adult and like figuring out underwear preferences. Okay. There's things like that that are super odd. It's hard to know that, okay, well now I can wear, like morally, I feel okay wearing a tank top, but do I feel okay with the perception of other people? Because that can be a symbol that I no longer wear my garments. I didn't wear a tank top for like years.
Long time. She still, even though she wouldn't wear the garment for a while, she would still wear the same kind of clothing because she took off the garments because, like you said, you wanted to respect the belief that other people had. But yeah, I mean, I would say probably a good 2 years that you continued wearing the same clothing.
Yeah, I wanted to hide the fact that I didn't have garments on because I didn't want people to label me as someone who either wasn't living up to her covenants, because that is definitely not my personality, or that was like someone that was rebelling or someone that was trying to like prove, because you see that a lot of times too. And I'm not judging anybody who does that, because everybody leaving the church feels differently about all of these things, and they all have the right to feel however they need to work through their faith journey. But there are definitely people as well that will be angry and kind of want to prove, like showing that I'm not Mormon anymore, right? So they might wear extra immodest clothing by Mormon standards, or go and get extra piercings and tattoos as a way to show like I'm free to do whatever I want. These are all the things I wanted. And if that's what you want, then good for you in doing that. For me, it was like, I don't know if I even want people to know that I'm not Mormon, because that's part of my culture and like how I was raised. And so it took me a long time to be able to do that. It took me longer to be able to wear a tank top on screen. I think we still probably only have like 3 or 4 videos out of 400.
This is a big step.
Whoo, right? Because it's a way of, again, showing that I have stepped away from that faith and that I've stepped away from the belief in those covenants that I made. Because if I still believed that those covenants were important to my eternal salvation, I would be wearing my garment.
Isn't it interesting how clothing can be such a big factor in how one feels and how one judges and things? I mean, you take an extreme like the FLDS church. Clothing to them is everything. It is so important. It is so, so important. You could be fully believing in the FLDS church. You could be the most obedient person in the world to Warren Jeffs. You could be spreading his word. Don't do that, but you could. And if you were, and everyone knew it, but one day you decided to just put on a t-shirt, put on a pair of shorts, immediately the entire community would look at you differently. You would never be the same in their eyes again because of that one thing. And I'm not saying you walked naked across town. I'm saying you put on a t-shirt. Yeah. That is how big of an impact the clothing you wear can have in a community that is so big on requiring certain standards. Yeah. So I know that the FLDS is a little bit extreme, but I just wanted to prove a point. And I know that this goes for so many other, especially these tight-knit, closed-off community-type religions, especially those ones. Clothing can be so, so important to that faith that you change one simple thing about it and you can be judged for the rest of your life because of it.
And then you are dealing with the guilt and the shame and all of the things that come with that in having to live that perfect standard. And for people who maybe garments just make them feel uncomfortable, or they just don't like having that extra layer. Sometimes it's hot, those type of things, to know that discomfort equals unworthiness or judgment. There's just so much surrounding it that is just so hard. But I guess the real question that I do want you to answer, you can ignore my one from before about underwear, but this one, I want everyone to leave in the comments what you think. If garments are meant to be a personal reminder of a covenant with God, should anyone else have the right to judge you for how or if you wear them? And
does wearing or not wearing garments make you a better Mormon? Or is this just another way for communities to judge and shame one another? We've seen firsthand how this pressure plays out, and it can be so, so damaging.
If you want to hear more about what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, or more on topics like this, or Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, Sister Wives, or any other shows that you'd like us to review, please leave in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here with us again, and thank you all for liking and subscribing. You are really helping us reach our goal. We look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.